Hello my friends and welcome to this video. This is just a guide on pre-phasing at Telos, what it is and how to do it. It'll be in a guide format but I'll explain things as I go along. Now first of all, pre-phasing in its simplest form is just hitting Telos with an ability at the end of a phase and then having that damage appear at the start of the following phase. It's not the same then as ability stalling. This is just an example. A simple example of pre-phasing into P2. As you'll see, there'll be 4 hits that appear at the start of P2. The first being Deep Breath, which is cast from P1, and then the other 3 composed of just a normal auto attack wild magic that are performed at the start of P2. There's 3 criteria for pre-phasing to occur, and I'll add more detail to that in a minute. First, you must use specific autos or abilities that belong to a certain family of effects that allow for it to occur. Secondly, said ability must be performed on the last attackable tick at the end of a phase. And lastly, the ability must be cast at a range at which it has an increased delay before it would normally appear on the target. Here's some notable abilities that allow for pre-phasing. They all belong to a certain family of abilities, but it's quite difficult to define. Predominantly they are AoEs, but there are some non-AoEs as well. For magic, notably you have barrage autos, deep breath, chain, and also the second hit of wild magic. Though it may not be worth doing the second hit of wild magic since you'd lose out on the first hit. For range you have ricochet and bombardment, and for melee you have quake, which works. Technically there are others for melee as well, but they'd have to be cast at such a range from Telos that it's not viable. The last tick of the phase that this needs to be performed on is the phased tick. It is the tick that Telos would otherwise attack, but first the game checks to see what his HP is, and if he's at the HP does not attack and instead is phased. This tick allows you to still perform autos and abilities and the like. Just to note, this tick doesn't allow for normal pathing, but Surge and Bladed Dive will still function as normal. The distance from Telos that the pre-phased ability must be cast at will differ depending on the ability. This distance is calculated between your character and the southwesternmost tile of Telos, thus being north or east of Telos makes it easier to pre-phase. Shown is a quick sketch of mine that should just illustrate this. As you can see, for example, the Quake and the second hit of wild magic become delayed once they are cast only 5 tiles or more from Telos, whereas the other examples are delayed when they are cast 7 tiles or more from Telos. Without going any further, I'll say it's just worth trying out the mentioned barrage autos and other abilities at the end of some phases. Should they be going on for longer than planned or something, you can just try it out for yourself and see what you make of it. Pre-phasing can simply just be a nice tool to improvise with, especially for instance at 1k plus, so you're typically wanting to start certain phases with an ice auto, and ability stalling wouldn't be viable in that instance. In this example, you'll see I was simply just improvising this kill. This kill went south real quick before I was doing 1k plus. So I'm just improvising this rotation anyway at the end of this P3 that was going on for a while. I managed to then pre-phase a deep breath into P4, and yeah, just have a look at the freedom timer. You can basically see that pre-phase deep breath really did probably save me from additional auto attack at the start of that P4. As an example of pre-phasing in a rotation, I'll go over a sub 1k rot and 1k plus rot with P1 that each allow for a deep breath pre-phase into P2. Quick note that a sub 1k P1 is just something I rusted up, it hasn't been spreadsheeted at all. Also, because of how the sub 1k tangents can easily be broken without the need of any end of ult sunshine maniacal stacking, it allows for a deep breath pre-phase to also benefit from the sunshine buff. For this sub 1k rotation, that I'll just show in video in a moment, I'll read it out first. I just start with a Sunshine into an auto debrief, Hammer with fast attack speed, main hand weaponry, auto combust, Ice Freedom, Ice Rack, Wild Magic, 3 hitter sticks into Rack, auto debrief, Deep Impact, auto impact, combust, free tick detonate, Ice Dedo Rack, and then a pre-phase debrief after first moving a bit north away from the boss while still being under the effects of Sunshine. For this 1k plus run, I start with Sunshine into auto debrief, Hammer, combust, freedom with a normal offhand auto into Ice Rack, corruption whilst repositioning the boss, 3 hitters fix into deep impact, auto rack, debrief. In this instance, as in the video, I'll be repositioning the boss once more, auto impact into a dual wield gothic staff spec, auto combust, fork tick detonate into auto dedo wild magic surge, and then pre-phase debrief. In other Telos positions, you may need to walk further north or east from Telos before pre-phasing debrief, but do be careful to not move there too early, as it may put you outside of range of tendrils, and then you may get tendril drag. For another example here, I'll just show this sub 1k P3 rob. I'll go over the rob first, you'll see it in video form in just a moment. I start the phase of stalled bleed, but you could otherwise, and I release that with dual wield, you could otherwise just do a wand auto, and then that's done into a dual wield ability. I then meta for a lossless staff auto. At the start of meta, I then use debrief and use Ice Rush into Rack with manual spellcasting, and this is just because sub 1k, just got freedom timer, I still want to walk the combust for extra damage. I then combust, I then Ice Barrage into Wild Magic, 3 tick detonate, and then auto dedo into a 4 hit sticks into Rack, and then pre-phase with debrief. There's just a couple of extra miscellaneous things I could go over about pre-phasing. I did touch on this earlier, but just to reiterate, if the auto or ability is cast under the effects of an ult, then at the end of the phase, then the damage still remains boosted when that damage appears at the start of the following phase. You can't pre-phase into P4, you can't pre-phase into P5 since it's a completely different entity, nor can you pre-phase P4 sub-phases. You can normally just pre-phase into P4 from P3, but you couldn't, let's say, after the first one deal some damage and let that appear after the second one or something like that. Also, following up with pre-phase ability with Provoke may be useful should you be unsure about the range between you and Telos, and if you aren't wishing to accidentally stall the ability, since Vogue would just clear the ability and it will allow you to auto attack at the start of following phase. Alternatively, you could simply just surge or escape, you can use that instead.